So I have to work today. I thought I'd have a chat to anybody who cares to listen before I start. Just for the company, really. I was interested to see. I sometimes look at comments that I've received and I try to answer them. And I'm sure I miss some people. But I read a very, very critical comment this morning, and I even wondered whether it hadn't been written by somebody that knows me, in the sense of where I live and that kind of thing. I suppose some people who do know me might listen, although I, have desisted completely from ever telling anybody. But it's difficult, to keep it entirely secret, I suppose. Most people don't care. That's the fact of the matter. But anyway, if anybody knows me as a living person, then I will say hello at this point in time and ask you why you don't come round and, cheer me up from time to time, whoever you are, unless you're the living person that left such a critical comment when you pointed out how nasty I was, which I am, I've never really made a secret of it. The person accused me of, or said that I was narcissistic, and I actually disagree with that. I think narcissism and vanity are separate matters. People use the word narcissism to mean people who are kind of self-obsessed, and I suppose I would fit that if that's the meaning of narcissism. But really, when you get into narcissism, it's a mental illness. It's not it's the opposite of self-obsession, in fact, because the narcissist has no conception of themselves. It's quite a serious matter, and I think it's often misconstrued, and people will say, well, we're all a bit narcissistic and so on and so forth, and just see it as being thinking highly of themselves, I suppose. But really, we are wretched, all of us. I mean, that's the starting point. But nonetheless, a little bit of self-esteem goes a long way. Now, the fact that I'm prepared to share my thoughts on the internet the way that I've done shows that I probably have quite a lot, and fair play. But that was interesting to get that comment, and I thanked the person and so on and so forth. I won't get into a back and forth really, unless somebody brings up an issue in particular. I might try and address it. So I was listening this morning to Bo Refek, Borefec, who's like a kind of Passport Bros speaker on YouTube, and he's a Romanian guy, but he's lived all of his life in the US, and he recently, as far as I understand it, has moved to Romania. I think he left when he was a very small child, if he was even born there. I'm not sure of that. And he's showing how beautiful the country is and how prosperous it is and how cheap everything is. And it's a Christian country. Romania is, like 90% Christian. And it will be ethnically quite pure, if you like. The Romanian people, I would say, are Israelites. And that can be seen in their practicing religion. And there's a small number of Rom people who hail from Romania. And I've had the privilege of meeting Rom people when I was in Italy and getting into actually getting to know them a little bit, um, due to circumstances. And I was impressed by their actually, there were traces or strong traces of faith among them. They did seem they focused on the church, and they considered the church to be a holy place, but they didn't consider the people who went to the church or the people who administrated the church to be the righteous keepers, as it were. They considered them to be misguided or foolish. But the building retained a certain attraction for them, and they were believers essentially. I don't know. I think it might be stretching a point to call them Bible readers, but the great thing about them was that I think because they were viewed by most of society in such a negative light, and you could say rightfully so, because of course they were thieves and scammers and all sorts of things they would get up to. You could hardly invent something more clever than the Romany gypsies. They're very good, and fortune telling and all the rest of it, which you could say that's quite useful if you believe in those things. And who can say that they're not valid? A fortune teller can speak the words of the Lord, and it may be more likely to hear them from a fortune teller than it would be from a pulpit, to be perfectly frank. My estimation of today's church is very poor indeed. I think it exists with the main function of misleading people, leading them astray. So, as the passport bros, and Bo is kind of selling the lifestyle of Romania, and there are very good reasons that it would be attractive to anybody, really, because the crime rate is very, very low. The cost of living is like a quarter of what it is in the States. There's law and order on the streets, and so on and so forth, and there's a measure of prosperity. But of course, those things are just decided by the people who are, ruling, who are by our corrupt rulers. They choose which country shall prosper and which country shall be brought low, because they control the economic system. It's not a competition, really, I don't think. It's just the hand of control over the world economic system, and they seem to have the ability to channel wealth. And when you channel wealth into a place, then you get an initial appearance and sensation of well-being and prosperity, of course, and comfort. But when you remove wealth, as it's been removed from my country and from the United States and from many European countries, then you create the opposite effect, as it were. You create a scourge upon the nations, and we are brought low. But in that estimation, of course, being brought low is our actual proper place, firstly. And secondly, there is the matter of the curses as listed in Deuteronomy 28. The Deuteronomical curses, they call them. And there's a fair number of them. They start from Deuteronomy 28, verse 16. And you'd need to, have a strong stomach to read through them all. And you'd need to, how much they correspond to what our nations are undergoing at the moment. And the reason that we're undergoing those things is because we've turned away from God. That's the spiritual reason, because, we fight not against flesh and blood. It's not Klaus Schwab that's our enemy. I'm sure he's a very nice man, and he's our neighbour, and so he must be treated with the same respect as all of our neighbours. It doesn't matter whether you're, an American president, retired or sitting, or whoever you might be, or an international banker with millions in the bank. You're still included in the love thy neighbour clause. That's the problem, you see. This is why once that begins to be applied fully and thoroughly, that marks the inception of the kingdom of heaven. Which is why the rulers are so intent on dividing us in one way or another, on sowing division among the people. And the only way that we can, I think, spiritually resist division is by resolutely applying the second great commandment, love thy neighbour. And that includes people who glue themselves to the road, and people who do all sorts of things that probably, could be a bit upsetting, but they're our neighbours and we just have to let it go, whoever they are. And gradually that will spread, you see. That's how it works. We're not to have, be falling out, really. That's how it would work. And so all the groupings that they're doing and setting one group against another, and it occurs also in the church, it occurs throughout society, are diametrically opposed to the kingdom of heaven. Because there must be peace among the brethren, and tolerance, and the beam and the mote must be always remembered. And then society becomes a peaceable place because we make it peaceable. And in doing so, we are following the will of the Father. And so the curses will gradually be removed from our lands as these new ways of conducting ourselves started to spread, as they must do. And they will do it perhaps more easily, you see, in times of scourging than they would do in, say, Romania, which is, or other countries that are currently, having quite a good experience, so it would seem. I mean, I haven't been there. But I don't think it will be enduring, because the new heaven cannot be created with money. It can only be built upon love. And that should be our foundation, I think. God bless this morning.